I lived in a house with parents that were not a believer in God. The home life was an abusive life from as early as I can remember. My parents were, I'd like to describe them as gypsies, and they were traveling from town to town, state to state. And those relocations, as I got older, I'm pretty confident those were because they were afraid that people were going to catch on to the fact that we were being abused in pretty much any way you can imagine. For that time between 5 and 15, there were many, many, many days where I really said to God, if you are hearing me, why are you allowing this to happen? Why am I going through this? People that were supposed to be taking care of me and nurturing me and loving me were doing the opposite. I finally realized as I got older that the only help I had was myself. And the only help my sisters had, I had 2 sisters at home still that were younger, was me. At that point, honestly, I didn't believe there was a God. And I spent many years during that time, and then up until I was 30, where church was not an option for me, because my thought was always, how can there be a God? When I turned 30, I went and found a church in the town that I was living in at the time. And I started going to church for a while. And it was difficult for me to really, for lack of a better word, to go all in and to go from where I was at, where I wasn't believing in God, to all of a sudden believing in God. And what happened over time was I felt like I was let down by the church. In all reality, I likely let God down. The church never really let me down, but I used that as an excuse to remove myself out of the church again and away from God. But in the back of my mind, my thoughts were still back onto those days between the ages of 5 and 15, where I was being abused at home, and there was nobody helping me, and there was no God I felt like was helping me. In 2010, I met my wife, Cherie, and she came from an opposite avenue as a child. Her family was Christians. When we met and started dating and then ultimately got married, along that pathway, she was pretty consistently talking to me about Jesus and going to church. She said, but I really believe that that's the path that you're meant to be on. She said, because you are a good person. You went through everything that you went through to get to here, and you're a good man and a good person. October last year, we were driving around town, and I was kind of looking around, and there were a lot of churches, and I was thinking about talking to her about let's find a church to go to. She said, I think that's a great idea. I've been thinking about the same thing. And so she said, I'm going to make a list of the churches that are in Carlinville. So she sat down and she made a list. And when I came home from work the next night, she had the list sitting on the counter. At the top of that list was Cross Church. And she said, here's the list. And I said, well, let's go to Cross Church first. And so we came to church that Sunday. And that was a life-changing day for me. During that service, for the first time that I ever have done this, I was crying during the service, and Cherie turned to me and gave me a hug, and she said, I know, just let it out. I still, when I walked in the door here, was still unsure of what I believed. Now that uncertainty is gone, I feel like everything has led us to this point.